Pranakasha livestream.
Hey folks, it's Matt at Pranakasha Productions, and today we are talking with Eric Hayden of the Orville VFX co-supervisor, and also he's got his hand in a whole bunch of other stuff too. So I'm super happy to have him here, and we already did some crazy schedule manipulations to get this to happen. I managed to mow my lawn, and Eric managed to get out of a meeting that sort of went a lot longer than we thought. So off we go. And it's possible that he may have to run at a moment's notice. So every moment is precious here.
Well, Matt, it's nice to meet you.
Oh, yeah. I'm super happy to have you on the show. So, of course, I'm part of the Orville community, and I'm like every day on Twitter rooting for Orville season 4. So we're all pushing for that. Now, my theory about that, to tell the truth, I think it's going to happen. I think what's happening behind the scenes is just contract negotiations where people are haggling for money. So, but you don't have to tell me either way.
Well, I don't know the answer one way or the other than I will say that I know that the general vibe is that that everyone would like there to be a season 4. But after, as long as it took to make season 3, people are doing other projects right now, which is going to take a hot second to get the whole gang back together again.
Right. Well, it seems like a no-brainer because, I mean, like last week, the Orville was the number 3 streaming show in the USA.
Wow.
It missed number 2 by a tiny margin.
Wow.
At least according to Parrot Analytics. So
I'm very proud to have been on the show, and I'm glad that everyone is enjoying it as much as they are. It really did turn out great.
The VFX are amazing in it. And honestly, for me, that's sort of icing on the cake because I'm a TOS guy, Star Trek, the original series, and I still watch those episodes and love them, even though the level of technology as far as the effects goes is way beneath what we have nowadays. Yeah. But yeah.
Storytelling is the key. If the story is good and the script is good and everything is good, then everything else is just gravy.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of attention to detail was paid from every department, from the writing and from wardrobe, from sets, from everything was about making sure the stories got told for Orville, and it became each individual's department to contribute their best to that.
Yeah, it shows.
Yeah, it
really
fun.
Shows. So, of course, I mean, even the opening sequence is so good.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was fun. That was very fun to work on.
And I know I watched your interview with Orville Nation, so I caught a lot of stuff there, and I don't want to just do a repeat of that. Okay. So, guys, we'll put a link to that interview so you can watch that, if you haven't seen it yet. One thing that struck me in that interview was that I think you said that Seth was very involved with just designing the shots, the VFX shots, and how they came out. So that surprised me a bit.
Yeah, he's a very visual storyteller, and he worked very closely with Brandon Fayette to create the previses of every sequence, and that way we were able to honor his vision all the way through. Yeah, and it was very much being able to watch the show before the show existed. So it was a great exercise.
Yeah, and you guys showed a clip over there on that interview of the scene where they were doing the sort of paratrooper scene, which reminded me of the J.J. Abrams Star Trek 2009.
For sure.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what it was purposeful to do that. And the thing, again, that struck me is that it looks like what you guys did is you sketched it all out, in 3D models and everything, and figured out all the basic angles and everything. And Seth approved it. And then after that, you ship it off to your vendors to flesh it out, right?
Well, yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, and then the major in-between part is trying to shoot as much of it as you can with the actors and with on the set pieces, and looking at the previs and going, well, if we put a camera here, then we can get this much of the real shuttle prop in it, and there's a lot of discussion with all the departments to make sure that a sequence like that comes together. But yeah, and then it goes off to the vendors, and they have to make it all look real and make it look like like it was all shot at the same time. And that was a very challenging sequence.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it looked great. It worked great.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So then the one thing that I'd like to ask about that is then once you send it to the vendors, is there still a lot of back and forth? Like, do they keep sending you how it develops, or do you just let them do their thing?
I mean, for the most part, you set benchmark levels of like approval, so that we can make sure that the models that they receive from our department are simple, and they need a lot of detail put into them. So we get to look at their presentation as to what the final model will look like, what the final lighting will look like for the scene. And then, passes through the course of the sequence of, okay, well, this is the rough pass to make sure everything's functioning. That way we can show it to Seth while it's starting to look like something, and make sure that he still likes it and doesn't want to make any changes, or we need to add laser blasts or explosions or stuff like that. And then eventually you get it kind of what it is going to be is locked down. And then it's a matter of just getting it up to the state of being final and ready to air. But it allows, there's a lot of room for the vendors to contribute their creative taste and piece to the overall product, because everyone who works in the industry is an artist.
Right. You can tell.
You don't want to disrespect those craftsmen and those artists by saying, "Oh, no, don't do it that way," or you want everyone to have their opportunity to come to the table with their vision, and really, that's how good stuff gets made.
Okay, 2 questions already. So number one, is that like it start out as like a daily process, or is that like weekly, or what's like the level of iteration?
It depends on the sequence. It depends on the volume of shots. I would say that for a long stretch of post-production, we would meet with each different vendor once a week, and then get their newest versions of things. Sometimes you don't see a new version of a singular shot for several weeks, but you can make notes on a single shot, and then that will get filtered through other shots that are similar, so that when you meet with them the next week, you might see new shots that you hadn't seen the week before, but they will have honored the notes that you've given on the other shot.
Okay.
Because you have to everything, especially on a show as complicated as Orville. In the last episodes, you really have to keep a sense of forward momentum, and because if you just stopped and only worked on getting one shot finaled, we'd never finish the show.
Right.
And so the goal was always to make improvements, but never stop working.
Okay, and did Tom edit all the episodes?
There's editors for each episode.
Oh, okay.
And Tom is the head editor, so you'll see his name on all of the episodes. But every episode has an editor that works with Tom very closely to make sure. I mean, Tom's connection to Seth is very strong.
Okay.
So it really is. But we had Hillary and Bart, and there's a number of Kevin. Very talented editors came to contribute their art to the pieces as well.
Okay.
But all under Tom's guidance.
So does he give Tom the authority to call some pretty big shots, or does Seth always get in there and finally give this stamp of approval on things?
It's hard. To be honest, it's hard to say, because the editing room is very private to the editors. So I'm not, in the sense that we don't really, get our hands in their kitchen too much as they put their stuff together. If they have questions regarding an effects sequence or a visual effects sequence, they'll ask us, or they'll request new versions of shots. But in terms of that, that go back and forth and that creative synergy, that's specific to the editors, in the same way that our meetings with Seth were very specific to us.
So when you talk to him, you're already pretty far in the weeds.
Yes.
As far as technical details and stuff. Okay. So how often does it happen where like you're halfway through the process and it's just not working, like, or he just doesn't like it and he just says, screw it, just junk it. We're not going to even do this scene.
No, I don't think that ever happened.
Really? So once you got that far, it was, and you never had them edit it out or anything like that?
I mean, I would go so far as to say that Seth put everything he could into the show and nothing was taken out. And there certainly was not anything that was taken out because of lack of satisfaction. It was always a sense of this, everything that we are doing is making the show bigger and more fun to watch. So let's make it work. So that's why we have run times that are longer and wildly different than any other show that you'll see streaming, because we have one episode that's well over an hour and 20 minutes. I mean, these are features and
miniature movies. Yeah.
And that was because Seth he wanted to put it all in. He didn't want to cut, I think his thesis was, if it didn't need to be there, it wouldn't have been written.
Okay.
And so there were many times, because I've worked on other projects, where things get cut regularly.
Because you're trying to fit it into 45 minutes or whatever.
Yeah, you're trying to fit it, or under budget, or could be a million reasons why. And so when I initially read the scripts, I thought, well, these are cool sequences, but we'll never do that. and there we were.
Wow.
So that was kind of part of the fun of that journey and made it a very unique experience.
Okay, I have to be careful because I could just go on, and I know we could get cut off at any moment. So, but I do want to say, okay, so, well, I lost it, but
it's all good.
Can I ask you a couple questions? Like, you did some really cool shots where you did kind of a crane shot from the exterior of the bridge where you're looking right through and you see everybody inside and the camera's moving like that.
Yeah.
So did you guys actually do that physically, or is that all CGI?
We did a couple of those shots where we go from either inside the bridge to outside, or we're just looking at everyone
through the windows.
And those were all everyone. We shot those for real, in the sense that the cast was there on the bridge set. The bridge set, I don't know what footage is out there to show what the bridge set looks like. I know I've seen enough to know that I'm not in too big a trouble saying it, but the bridge set is very, very well finished on the inside, but on the outside of it, it's not. It's a set. It's a functioning set where you can see all the flyaway walls and the cabling and everything like that. Right. But because we took great pains to make sure that the CGI model of the Orville actually fit around the sets. It made it possible to marry the CGI model of the Orville to the physical set in a way that was pretty seamless, and then you get those fun shots, and those are priceless, because those are very impressive
shots. Yeah. So that one, for example. So basically, you did a crane shot, and you did the crane shot, everybody on the set.
Yep.
And then you superimposed the CGI skins over all the exterior part of the sets, basically, right?
Exactly. And then in some cases, like, we would get far enough away that it was farther than the camera could move on the set. So at a certain point, we did transition all of the characters to their CGI counterparts, but only when they were so small that you couldn't tell that it happened.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's also good.
It's fun. And honestly, that was one thing that we wanted to do this season more so than the previous seasons, was in the Orville models for seasons 1 and 2, the windows except for the bridge, you could see into the bridge, but the windows across the rest of the ship were all just glowing panes of glass.
Right.
What we did going into this season is we made sure that you could see through the glass and see inside and see the cast in there and see people. I mean, so and actually, what you're seeing when you look in there, that's actual scan data of the actual physical sets. Is we had a crew come by with their what's called a LiDAR scanner, and they would scan every set, and then we shrank it down and put it into the model. So it's not even what you're seeing is not even.
I see what you're saying.
A fake of it. It's an actual real projection of the set in there.
So I think what you're saying is that the CGI models of the interior of the ship are actually inputted into the system through these LiDAR scanners.
Correct.
Okay,
yeah.
so they're absolutely real.
They're as real as you can get in the CGI world. So the textures and everything are based on the photographs that the LiDAR scanners take on set. So it really is. I mean, you're really seeing the set inside the spaceship.
Yeah.
And that was fun. To me, that was like one of my favorite things that we did this season was to take the Orville model and to upgrade it in a way that made it feel more like an intricate movie miniature. But at the same rate, also have more scale to it, so that you got the sensation that this was a big thing and not a toy.
Right.
So we wanted to honor the depth of kind of the scripts that were coming out.
Okay. So let's go there for a sec. So now everybody uses CGI, right? Mm-hmm. However, if you really look, if you compare today's state-of-the-art CGI, it still does not look as real as the Starship Enterprise on Star Trek: The Motion Picture. That was the most beautiful model ever.
You're tugging at my heartstrings there, because I'm an old school miniature guy. So when I started in the industry, most of the work that I did was doing miniatures and props, and I did a lot of work for the creature shops, doing robots for the creature shops. But I did there was a movie called Zathura, with the house floating in space and the spaceships that come to. It's kind of a sequel or prequel or in the same family as the Jumanji story, but I mean, that was a great big beautiful miniature, that house, and all the spaceships in it were miniatures. I had a blast doing that. I did stuff for Team America. Right. I did, I know Wolfgang Peterson passed away recently, but I did his remake of Poseidon. We built these fantastic miniatures for that.
Wow.
And really, it to me, you're not wrong. I mean, real light bouncing off of a real object that is photographed to me is beautiful. And when I work on things, I always try to help recapture that vibe.
Okay, so let's go one more. You, of course, have watched Space 2001, Space 2001: A Space Odyssey, right?
Yes.
Obviously.
Many times. It's like church to me.
And again, you go back and you watch that and you're like, wow, this was made in the 60s and it still looks great.
It does. Every one of those shots holds up. Yeah.
And so now let's go to can we transition to your movie, Astronaut, the Last Push?
Yeah.
So in the very opening shot, I could see that the influence of 2001 in that. And in fact, even in the music, I think your wife did the music, right?
She did. Yeah. Kim did the music. She composed the score. It was our kids are both in the movie.
Okay, I figured. They're grown up now, though.
They're much more grown up now. And they went through a phase where they didn't want to talk about it. And now they're back to the phase where they think it was cool again. Yeah. there was a part of me that when I pitched the movie to my friends that we made it together, I said, you know, that part in 2001 where he blows himself through the airlock, and he's in that little rectangular or that little octagonal space there, and he just came in from outer space, and he's there for a minute. What if we made a whole movie in that space?
You kind of did.
I think they didn't really realize that I meant it. Hold that thought for one moment. I'm checking my messages here.
Uh-oh, here it comes.
No, we're good so far.
Hooray.
Yeah.
Okay, now what we should do, I mean, we just assumed a lot by just jumping right into this. Maybe we should have you give a quick pitch for your movie and explain to people what we're even talking about.
Yeah. So I directed a film called Astronaut: The Last Push. And it was, it stars Kari Payton, who people might recognize from The Walking Dead, and Brian Baumgartner, who I'm sure people recognize from The Office, Lance Henriksen, who people might recognize for just being Lance Henriksen, and James Matteo, who you might remember from Band of Brothers. I mean, it was this really cool little project that we got together and wanted to make an experimental science fiction film.
It took you 8 years, right?
Well, it took a long time. The shooting of it took about, I want to say, over the course of a year. The actual post-production took 5 years. And you know, it was a long process from when we started shooting in 2008 to when it was finally purchased and viewable. Actually, I was able to go into a Blockbuster Video and see it on the shelves.
Great.
Yeah, that was one of my moments. That was in September of 2013. So,
and I think it has close to 300,000 views on YouTube now, so that's pretty decent.
Yeah, it lived most of its life on Amazon Prime before they transitioned it to YouTube. So,
link in the description. If you guys haven't seen it, you got to watch it. It's really good.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, check it out on the YouTube stream is great. They did a great. It's a high quality stream. You know, there are places that you can pay to see it, but I would always say, hey, I'll take any of the views that it can get. And so if you can see it without paying for it, go to YouTube. But it's, I'm very proud of it. We set up to make a movie that we knew was going to be improvised. And that we wanted to make it feel natural, almost like a documentary, and have a sensation throughout that it was genuine or tactile, a sense, especially from Kari's performance,
right?
A sense that this is not we're not faking it. By being over dramatic. And so I'm very proud of how everything turned out, and it was a very fun project, and our year or so on the film festival circuit is some of my favorite memories.
Yeah. So you said improvise. So what did the script look like?
It was we had a script. It was kind of like a long outline. It was like 25 pages. With no real, there was a couple of bits of lines of dialogue, and there were times when we would come to an agreement on a certain chunk of text that, well, this chunk needs to be scripted, and we would do that kind of on an as needed basis. But for the most part, it was like we would get to set and we would warm up and we would film the warm up routine, and that would be, you know, hey, so Kari's he's got to brush his teeth and do his hair and do his workout, and then we would, you know, shoot what we wanted to get in that given day, and then I would go. It's like we would shoot on the weekends, and I would go and do a rough edit during the week to try and figure out, you know, well, we got this and that and the other. Yeah. And then it came down to the last stretches of days that we had where we could really shoot.
Yeah.
And it almost felt like we reshot the whole movie in those days. But but yeah, it was a cool experience. I transitioned myself out of miniatures and into CGI during that film, just so that I could, 2008 was a weird year because the global economy crashed, and a lot of the work that I did dried up for a stretch. So it was time to learn a new tradecraft.
Okay. And so you were the director too, right? Were you the director?
Yeah.
So you directed it, you wrote the quote script.
Yeah.
And then you were the editor and you're the VFX guy.
Yeah.
Did you actually storyboard it, or did you just keep most of it just in your head?
We didn't storyboard it. The VFX sequences I prevised. I have to check my phone again, just in case. Oh, we're doing good so far. Sorry. The drama. Upside is I don't have COVID. That's one of the official texts I got.
Okay, good.
But yeah, what was I saying? No, we didn't storyboard the script at all. But we did previs the VFX sequences, and I'll say so. So a lot of my skills in the world of miniatures building, it translate well to set building because it's just basically a big miniature.
Okay.
So I built the set.
Okay.
And it was built in a creature shop that just recently officially closed, ADI. And Alec Gillis and Tom Woodruff Jr., who owned that shop, are both in the movie. Which is cool. Or Tom Woodruff is the main alien in almost every Alien movie except for the first one. It's cool. It was a very cool environment to build the set because you're in a very creative space where there's sculptures going on and painting and creatures and all of that stuff. And we were gifted a corner of the shop to build the spaceship in. Okay,
let's talk about the set for a sec then. So what struck me is the set was very much inspired by Apollo era technologies.
Yes.
So now, was that just out of necessity, or did you want to have that sort of, because now it looks sort of retro when you compare it to a SpaceX capsule or something that would actually go to Europa now.
Right. Well, yeah, I went with what we had. Back then, I suppose if we were to do it again, it would probably have a little more sleeky SpaceX vibe to it. Mm-hmm. I personally like the aesthetic of the switches and knobs and pipes and tubing and all of that stuff. So what my dad is, I always like to say he's a rocket scientist, but he would say, no, I'm not. I'm an engineer. Engineer. But my dad is an aerospace engineer, and he worked on instruments for the Mars lander, the first one. He worked on this Galileo probe that actually went to Jupiter.
This is going to kill you, but I interviewed somebody whose dad took over the Viking project when it officially ended. Yeah, and in fact, she owns the third Viking lander that never went to Mars.
No way. Yeah. Oh, wow. That's cool.
They bought pieces of it in an auction and then put it all back together, and now they own it. In fact, I think it may still be at the Boeing Museum of Flight.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, she's on my channel.
Wow.
I went to high school with her.
Oh, well, tell her I said hi, and I would be fascinated to talk about it. My dad is, he's still around, and I'm sure he would love to talk about it as well.
Okay. Yeah. After the show, cool. I'll send you some of that info.
Yeah. So anyway, so my dad, he also did the project that went to Jupiter called the Galileo probe.
Yeah.
And
the Higgins, right? Or was it
it was there. I don't remember all the instruments that were tied onto it, but it was the Galileo probe, and it was there was something that launched off of it that went into the atmosphere, and I don't remember what it was called. Now my brain is going to break trying to remember it.
Sorry.
That's all right. But at any rate, I called my dad and said, can we work on the design of this spaceship together? Because at least, I can put together something in sci-fi land, and then he can kind of talk me out of it. And
make it look real.
Yeah. And when and also, but more importantly than make it look real, but also we, in the process of doing it, and there's a little animation that plays in the film. It goes by really fast and you probably don't even realize it in the beginning, but it displays how all the parts of the spaceship actually work to get to.
I remember that.
And how it lands and all that stuff.
I noticed that.
Yeah. My dad.
Where it all comes apart.
Yeah.
And then it goes down.
Turns around and
it stops spinning and everything. And
all of that was figured out. We talked about how big would the landing struts be and all that stuff, and
that's cool.
Inflatable habitat and the whole thing. It was really, really cool. And in fact, and I always love it. I don't get into talkback arguments of comments. When people comment on the movie and I didn't like this or whatever, that's fine. I love that it exists as a forum, but there are so many times that I read the comment, why in the hell is he going past Venus if he's going to Jupiter? That's the wrong direction.
Well, they explained it in the movie.
And you caught it, but and I'm like, but that the route that we do in the movie is very much the same route that the Galileo probe took to get to Jupiter.
Yeah.
And so, which required it to do a flyby Earth halfway through. So you don't really think about it, but there is no such thing as a direct line between two things in space. So
before a starship.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, we and originally I built a miniature of the Life One pod.
Oh, cool.
And we talked about doing all of it as miniatures. And I was able to negotiate a 1 day of shooting in a motion control stage.
Wow.
And the reality was that we did the math on it, and if everything went perfectly without any hiccups whatsoever, we would, in the course of a 12-hour day, probably get 4 shots, maybe 6.
Yeah.
And within those, say if we get 6, you can crop in and manipulate them around a little bit and make it look like you got 12.
Yeah.
But there's like 45 spaceship shots in the movie. And it was at that point where it was like, and I hadn't finished the miniature build yet. So I was like, I think I'm going to have to learn 3D, because then it was like, I could, but I tried to light the 3D model as in the same way that I would have lit it if it was a miniature.
It looks beautiful. I mean, I remember I was DMing you and I said, I thought it was a model.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I take that as a huge compliment. Yeah, because we really went out of our way to make sure that it had a feel that wasn't overly clean, CGI clean, but also and that it had. I'd say there's a sensation or desire with 3D work to overlight it. Because you have that control, and then you're also you're paying for all the details on it, and so it's like, well, why are we letting it fall off into shadow? Well, in reality, it would fall off into shadow. Right. If you look at what makes Star Trek: The Motion Picture and 2001 look great, and even the original Star Wars is that it's one big light being the sun, and everything falls off into darkness on the other side. And that's really what it looks like out there, and
it's a really dramatic effect.
Yeah, it's and so that's what we wanted to do with the spaceship shots in that.
Actually, I do that a lot when I do my own video or movie projects or whatever. A lot of times, I'll crank up the contrast just for that reason.
Yeah, it looks cool.
I think it looks great,
and I think it looks more tactile.
Yeah. So, okay. At the risk of throwing us in another tangent, have you seen that video where they decided for The Mandalorian to try to make a model and do some shots using practical effects?
I have not seen that video. No, but I should see that.
You'd love it.
Yeah.
and it looks super good because and it's well, you've seen The Mandalorian, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So his ship before it got blown up, spoiler guys,
Yeah.
it's sort of based off of World War II technology.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it looks like something out of out of the Luftwaffe or something like that.
Yeah.
But anyways, the model shots looked super good. It was beautiful because they basically painstakingly they took all the 3D renderings and then they cast them in plastic and made this beautiful looking model, and then they did a bunch of shots.
Send me or post the link to that video because I would like to see that. I have a lot of friends who worked on that show, and I love the work that went into it.
Okay.
Yeah. But I haven't seen that video yet.
Okay, I'll try and dig it up. I saw it probably 6 months ago. I'm sure I'll find it.
Yeah.
So then so now back to your show. So did you find, so it sounds like you sort of improvised as you were going. Did you kind of filmed it in sequence then?
Well, we did. We filmed it in a sequence, but it didn't turn out to be the sequence.
Okay.
In that, part of I love the art of collaboration. So to me, there's never any one right vision, and there can be a conversation about things, and there's a fine line between not having the confidence and then stalling out on notes versus welcoming somebody else's comments and deciding whether or not they help the story.
Okay.
And in the case of The Last Push, originally the Venus trip happened, or when he flies around Venus is almost in the midway point of the movie.
Okay.
And then a lot of stuff would happen after that, and that was kind of the ebb and flow of the storytelling that we were doing. But when we watched a cut with it, and it was very rudimentary cut with the previs, I mean, it was basically Venus was like an orange ball.
Okay.
And there was nothing really to speak of. AJ Raitano, our cinematographer, said, I think that's got to be the climax. I think that's better.
It worked great. Now that I assume this is it's an indie film, so it's relatively low budget.
Yeah.
But what you did, which was very clever, of course, and obviously you knew you were going to do this, is you were able to take your special effects and mix them with real footage, of like real rockets taking off, and then real footage of planets and stuff. And like for Venus, you showed part of Venus, and then what you did was, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure what you did is you just took pictures of clouds of Earth and then put it through a filter to make it look yellow and make it look like it's on Venus.
Some of them, for sure. Some of them, for sure.
But it all looked very convincing. It was all wonderful.
Well, thank you.
And then the actor reacted to it, and totally sold it.
Yeah.
So it was a powerful scene.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, and honestly, I have to give Kari all the credit for that, because if he doesn't sell it, none of it works.
And he's basically just looking at a light.
Yeah.
And imagining the entire thing.
And he's good at looking at that light.
Yeah.
And it really, honestly, that was the thing. That was like almost a running gag in the show was like whenever, whenever things got mysterious, the light of Venus like creeped through the window, and it was really just our set friend Yoko with a light, walking it around back and forth, and it was goofy. And it worked.
It worked great because you did things that they used to do in Star Trek TOS, like they had a certain budget and they couldn't do everything. So it's like Spock looking in his viewfinder with blue light on his face. And then he just describes everything he sees. But it's super effective because he sells it, and then you imagine everything he sees. And actually, to me, it's almost more powerful than if they actually showed what he was seeing on his scanner.
I agree. I think that the audience has a much more powerful contribution to the storytelling sometimes than the filmmakers do.
Yeah. So similar technique. You just had a light, and then we learned that light represented Venus. And then from then on, it was Venus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was, there were times when I know that before it all came together, that before the music was in place and before the editing was done and everything like that, that there were times when I was like, oh man, this looks really goofy. I don't know what have we done. But then when you get all of it together, and honestly, had to when we made the film, we made it and got it ready for festival distribution, not knowing that the requirements for actual physical or distribution to create a master that would be aired had a lot of different technical needs, and the entire sound track needed to be remixed. And
because they needed like 5 tracks or something like that.
Yeah, it was turned from a stereo track into a surround thing, and that was the process to learn also, because we didn't have the money to pay for a studio to do it.
Right.
The whole thing would have been a lot faster if we had money to pay people. But then,
so how did you fund it?
I was mostly personally financed.
Really?
Yeah, donations, personal finance, and a little bit of cash from friends and family.
Okay, so I'm guessing you're just talking like a few $1,000s, tens of thousands of dollars, not much more than that.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, it just goes to show you. I mean, if you have a vision and you've got an eye and you're good, you can do amazing stuff with no money. You
can, and I think that James Cameron is very popular now for saying you've got a camera in your phone that is better than anything that he ever used learning how to make movies. There's no excuse, to not practice.
Right. Though it does have kind of a fisheye problem.
It does. Well, but now mine has 3 different lenses. I mean, that's it's like having a Bolex, like an old student film Bolex in the back of my iPhone. But when we shot The Last Push, the Red camera had just come out. It was brand new. Okay. And AJ had been working on Avatar, the original Avatar, for a number of years. That's a great movie. And he got to know everyone on the camera department there, and they had purchased a bunch of the first Red cameras to try and turn them into 3D camera rigs for future Avatar films.
Okay.
And but for for a long stretch of time, they were just sitting in a shop gathering dust because no one knew what to do with them. But they loaned AJ. It was Red camera. I want to say serial number 34 to shoot The Last Push, and they had only.
Too bad it wasn't 42.
Oh, I know, that was great. But yeah, they actually we had to wait to start shooting until they were trying to work out some software bugs to be able to record the sound directly into the camera, because we could get a boom mic and everything, but I couldn't get a sound mixer, a person on set. This is terrible. What I'm saying right now is against every rule in Hollywood. But yeah, we waited until they had ironed out the technical bugs so that we could pipe the boom mic directly into the camera and record sound that way. And so that's how we got our sound. It was the Red camera was very new, and it was like I got another text here, just making sure everything's good. Okay, we're good. But yeah, I felt like we were kind of being pioneers with this new technology.
Cool.
Because it was to me the first digital platform that actually looked like film. It didn't have that overly shiny edge to it. And so I was extremely excited to get to do that. And now it's like they're kind of a dime a dozen at this point. But
plus, now you can run everything through a bunch of software filters to get the look you want.
You can. The goal, though, is that every time you run it through a filter, you're degrading the image a little bit. And so the goal is to retain as much data as possible Especially when it comes to like if you're shooting with a really nice lens on the camera,
right.
You want that. You don't want to crunch that. We, part of our camera package included lenses that we would never have been able to afford.
Okay, so, back to the Orville.
Yeah.
So supposedly the Orville was shot in 4K. I think what I heard was that the cameras were 4K, but then when it was in post-production, what came out of the editor software was not 4K. It was.
It's called. It is 4K technically. UHD, I think it's whatever. I mean, if you go to the store and buy a 4K TV today, at Sam's or Costco, it's the right kind of 4K. The real 4K is whatever 4,000 some odd pixels by, and there's so many different flavors of it. But yeah, we were doing. It's technically called 4K, but it's like UHD. Is what it is. But no, we were not using we shot in a larger format than it was broadcasting, and that's very normal. Right. And part of the advantage in that is that you can punch in on the footage without losing the quality or making it feel like you've zoomed in on it, and so that allows a lot of post manipulation of the frame that you don't really get if you shoot right to the edges.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is you can do some software zooms or pans and stuff, and it'll still be sharp enough that people won't yell at you.
Yeah, you're not.
So I don't know if we should go hit there, but that brings up an entire discussion about, like, see, when I see stuff that's shot in 4K or whatever, and people are like, oh, that's so crisp and so whatever, I actually hate it. Maybe it's because I grew up seeing movies. I actually like it when stuff's fuzzed out a little bit, and I actually like if I see something that's 60 frames per second, it looks wrong to me. It just looks fake. Yeah. Like I'm so used to, I want to see some flicker. I want it to look like a movie, and I want to see motion blur and all that kind of stuff, So
you're not going to get any argument out of me. That's, and the 4K of it is, the human eye can only perceive so much detail. So when you're starting to make footage that's bigger than 4K, you're kind of lying to your audience, because you can't tell the difference. It took a while before I started to truly appreciate the difference between 1080p and 4K. Only because initially in our industry, the processor hit that using 4K footage is very noticeable. But the overall final product outlook is not that noticeable.
So whether it's worth it or not.
Worth it. Now it's.
So 4K is, I think it's, let me see, if you double 2 dimensions, that means you got 4 times the processor, right?
Yeah,
or something like that.
I don't want to get. My math is terrible, so I won't go too deep into that into those weeds. But I'll say that when you shoot it in 4K or 5K or like 8K or whatever, and you're sitting there trying to process that footage, it takes up huge amounts of space that, on a processor, on a hard drive, that it doesn't, and you're not using any of that.
Every YouTuber knows what we're talking about, because we're talking about rendering our videos, whether it's going to take 4 hours or half a day, depending on how good your laptop is.
And and I won't mention names of the shows, but I worked on shows that were shot in 4K that were broadcast on 720p.
So after all that,
that's what truly is being. That's what the Air Master was. So it really is. I guess where I'm going with that whole thing is that motion blur, grain, all of these things that you and I probably associate with film still make things look better.
I agree.
And I think that I know that there's going to be an attempt to put push things into 60 frames a second or 48 frames a second.
Here's
I
another
don't know. I don't know what it is. I know that there was a demo that was done many years ago, and I'm going to kill this story because I don't remember the name of it. But it was film that was shot at 60 frames a second and projected at 60 frames a second. And I know I'm wanting to call it SpectraVision or VistaVision. It was something. It was a very technical test. And one of the things that they did for the test footage was hands pushing on fabric as if they were behind the movie screen. And for those people who went and saw that demo, they said that it looked 3D. That it looked.
Okay.
Now, does that mean it makes it a good movie? I don't. It made it an interesting experience, but I don't. The cost. This was before there was digital means of doing this, so the cost of doing something like that was so cost prohibitive. It wasn't going to happen.
So here's the problem, though. So if you got the cinematography guys or folks are all like, yeah, let's get the latest and greatest and make it as sharp as possible. Meanwhile, the art department's like, damn it.
Yeah.
Now everybody can see every single flaw and every single mask and every single fake ear and every single piece of makeup I do looks like shit because now.
Think of all those beautiful people not wearing those prosthetics who suddenly are seeing everything about themselves that they
every little pore, every little zit, every little wrinkle. I'm like, I don't like that. I want it to be blurred. Please blur it.
Yeah.
And so do you find yourself just after all that just going Gaussian blur?
It's not. It's a little. It's. I mean, there's no final. No, I don't think there's anyone who does a final like overall to it. I know when I worked on Deadwood, the movie, we did do a final grain pass to the thing. They matched the film grain that was used in the original series, and then on the movie they did a final pass to apply that grain to the movie.
Yeah, I know.
Which I thought was pretty cool. But I don't know if there is an answer to it, and the answer is different depending on who you're talking to.
So you don't witness arguments where like the art department just says, "Look, guys, you got to do something. There's only so much we can do to make it look real."
Arguments, no, but I would say that I've heard the phrase, "Can you help me out with this later?" many times.
Okay.
Yeah. And to be honest, we didn't have to do too much of it in the Orville because the makeup department was fantastic.
That's amazing.
There's a lot of prosthetic fixes that happen in other shows that happen, and that's almost its own line item in the budget.
Right. So you got a CGI. Things to make it a little bit better. Yeah.
Sorry, I keep getting my text alerts here.
That's okay. Alerts. That's like you're on. That means you're in demand. That's cool.
Yeah.
So are you able to divulge what this new project is?
I'm not. No, unfortunately, I'm not.
Well, I'm going to guess that it's Ted. And
it's
then
not.
I'll just watch your facial reaction.
I can honestly say that it is not Ted.
Okay. Does it have spaceships in it?
I'm not there. I'm going to abstain from comment.
Okay, I'll stop that line.
Yeah, but I will say that when I can tell everyone, I will. I'm very proud to be here. It's a show that I have not been on previously, and so I'm proud to be a part of it. And it's a cool
a pre-existing show.
Yeah.
Then that means it might be the second season of Strange New Worlds.
I'm not that. No. It's
That's not that. Okay.
Well, I will tell you this: when it is revealed, it will be an unexpected answer.
Ooh, unexpected. I'm not going to be able to sleep at night now.
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to ask another thing. So you're the VFX supervisor. So does that mean your job is mostly just doing spreadsheets and keeping track of the budget, or are you still actually creating shots and doing a lot of technical stuff?
Well, it's both. I work very closely with a VFX producer, and that producer from the Orville was Brooke. Mm-hmm. The producer's job is much more the spreadsheets and shot tracking, although the supervisor should know the answers as well. So it's very much a tag team kind of arrangement. But my job is very much to kind of conceive of how shots should be executed, designs that the directors and the producers will like, and if we want to try and do a specialty gag that is challenging, I'm still doing previs to try and help other departments figure out what to do. So yeah, it's a very I don't remember left brain or right brain, but it's a very creatively fulfilling job, but from an administrative perspective.
Great. Okay. Do you find yourself like scribbling stuff on napkins a lot, or do you just sort of like make castles in the air and try to describe it? Or
at this point, I'm pretty fast in Photoshop and stuff like that. So it's more digital napkins in the air. But the process is similar. You really have to. You really have to sketch something out before you make something, because that's how everyone in this industry understands. Well, I say everyone, that's not true, but most people understand a sketch as an intermediate step to a final piece. And so I do a lot of sketches. And it's fun. I enjoy that very much.
Oh, that's cool. Do you know David Cabeza? He's the guy who does the Orville comic books.
Oh, I don't know him.
Okay, you guys might have something in common actually in that realm. Yeah.
Yeah, I should know him, because his work is beautiful.
Yeah, so. He's on Twitter, so you can just follow him, and he's Franz DMs. Like I just interviewed him a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah,
and hopefully, if you know a little bit of Spanish, that helps a lot.
Oh, yeah. Well,
or Google Translate.
Very little.
Google Translate will help you out too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So we kind of went off into the Orville land. But I think I hit just about everything I wanted to know. Besides, I was hoping I'd get you to play your banjo, but I don't see it anywhere.
I unfortunately am in a zone right now where I can't. It's frustrating me, and I will let everyone know I'm going to be participating in a contest.
So you're in a banjo-free zone? How did that happen? Do you have that
it's just temporary. I'm in an empty room right here that's going to be our screening room for this show, and then I'm still kind of getting my office space set up to my liking. Okay. But yeah.
So you're not even at home right now?
No, I'm actually legitimately in an office.
Okay.
Once we get we're shooting now, but I'm still kind of getting my little office home built.
Cool.
And then I'm playing in an old time fiddlers competition in October.
Oh, really? So I play violin.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I play violin. Violin's my original instrument, and
right.
Yeah, and I just played a wedding like 2 days ago.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But I also play cello.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
In fact, you got a nice looking guitar behind you there too.
Yeah, I kind of suck at guitar, to tell you the truth. So that guitar has become more of a prop than anything else, even though it is very nice. It's very nice. It's
what is that?
It's an Epiphone Sheraton 2.
Okay.
It's a hollow body.
Nice.
And what I did was, you can't tell, but I also had Guitar Center put a Bigsby on it.
Oh, excellent.
Classic Bigsby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's really fun.
Yeah, my wife has a Gretsch that similar hollow body.
Oh, cool.
With a Bigsby on it.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
She needs to be on the show too.
Yeah, we'll have to get her.
Wow. Okay. Well, I think I hit it all. Maybe we should wrap it up while we have the chance before somebody just takes the hook and drags you away.
I know it would be dramatic to leave in such a fashion, but at the same rate, it's kind of pleasant to leave like a civilized human.
Yeah. Okay. Well, is there anything else you want to pitch, or some links that we should put in the description or anything like that?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at Eric Hayden, Eric
I'll
Hayden
put that
1.
Down there.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah.
I'm following you.
I'm trying to limit my political jibber jabber as best I can these days. But
forward. I had to put that in. That's my party. The Forward Party.
There you go.
I've had it with the Democrats. I've had it with the Republicans. So now I'm with the Forwards.
Yeah, well, I'm still waiting to see who I care about anymore.
Okay.
I'm working on a documentary right now called American Madness.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and the author T. Krulos is a genius.
Okay.
He wrote a book about a guy named Richard McCaslin, and it's very much a tragic tale of what happens when you go too deep down the conspiracy theory rabbit hole.
Okay.
But I'm very much proud of that project, and Kim and I have been working on that.
Great.
And I'm excited to be able to share some of that with everyone.
Cool. Okay, maybe we should do a follow-up interview just on that and when that comes out.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Awesome.
All right, sir. It's been a pleasure. Now, usually I always have people do live long and prosper because that's all Star Trek.
I'll do that.
Okay, live long and prosper. And then Jaloja.
All right.
Actually, I need to Jaloja right now.
Yeah, I might have to do that myself.
Wrap it up. Okay.
On set, we call that 10-1.
I got a 10-1, all right.
Yeah.
I just call it number 1.
Yeah, well, that's at home. Listen, Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. And
you too. Thanks for doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. And I'll be in touch, and you can always hit me up again at any time.
Sounds good. All right, sir.
Have a good one.
Next time.
All right.
Fantastic creations emerging spontaneously from the space of life.
For the benefit of all beings everywhere.
We gotta change.